My name is Ruby Dawson. I'm 35 years old, and the moment everything changed, didn't feel loud. It felt quiet. So quiet that if you weren't paying attention, you might have missed it completely. My boyfriend once stood in our kitchen, leaning against the counter like he was rehearsing something, and said, "Maybe you need to step back for a while. Think about what you're risking." And I remember something inside me didn't shatter. It stilled. Not anger, not panic, just clarity. At the time, I don't think Ethan understood what that silence meant, but I did. Before I met Ethan Caldwell, my life was simple in a way that felt intentional. I worked as a physical therapist at a sports rehab clinic in Denver. My days were structured: patience, recovery plans, repetition, helping people trust their bodies again after something had gone wrong. It required patience, consistency, and honesty. Things that didn't translate well into my relationship. Ethan was 31, a social media manager for a boutique travel brand. His life moved differently, fast, curated, always slightly performative. Where I built routines, he built moments. Where I valued stability, he chased attention. At the beginning, I thought that contrast made us stronger. Balance, I called it. We had been together just over 3 years. He'd been living in my condo for almost a year. The condo was mine. The mortgage, the paperwork, the keypad access, it all had my name on it. That mattered more than I realized. At first, Ethan felt like possibility. He was charming, quick with words, effortlessly stylish. He could walk into a quiet cafe and somehow make it feel like a scene worth watching. But everything with Ethan eventually became a scene. If I wanted a quiet night after a long shift, I was killing the energy. If I asked about plans, I was controlling. If I told him I didn't like the way he spoke to me when he was upset, suddenly he needed space. Space. That was his favorite word. Not real space. Weaponized space. He used it like a threat, like a reset button he could press whenever things didn't go his way. He didn't want distance. He wanted reaction. He wanted me to chase, to prove, to earn my place back after every disagreement. At first, I did. Then I explained. By the end, I was just tired. The last argument started small. The kind of small that had been quietly growing for months. That Thursday, I had a 12-hour shift. 2 post-op athletes, a high school pitcher with a shoulder injury, and a new patient who broke down halfway through intake because he was terrified he'd never run again. By the time I got home, I wanted 3 things: food, a shower, and 20 minutes of silence. Instead, I walked into my kitchen and found Ethan on FaceTime with 2 friends. There was a ring light set up on the counter, 3 open garment bags hanging from cabinet handles, and clothes everywhere. He was trying on outfits. "For Aspen," he said, like I'd already been told. I hadn't. I stood there for a second, taking it in. The brightness, the noise, the performance. Then I asked one question. "When were you going to tell me you'd be gone all weekend?" He muted the call and gave me that look. The one that said I was already wrong before I finished speaking. I mentioned it. He hadn't. "No, you didn't," I said, keeping my voice even. "I'm not saying don't go. I'm saying it would have been nice to know before I walk in and see luggage." He rolled his eyes so hard it almost looked painful. And then came the speech. How I made everything heavy. How he felt judged in his own home. How normal girlfriends supported opportunities instead of interrogating them. I stayed calm, which he hated. "I'm not interrogating you," I said. "I'm asking for basic respect." He laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because mockery was easier than accountability. Then he unmuted the call and went right back to smiling at his friends like I wasn't standing there. Like I didn't exist. I took my dinner to the balcony and ate in silence. Because at that point, peace was worth more than being understood. At 9:48 that night, after he left to meet friends, my phone buzzed. It was Ethan. "Maybe we need a break, so you remember what you're losing." I read it once, then again. A year earlier, that message would have broken something in me, sent me straight into apology mode, made me question everything I'd said, everything I'd done. But that night, it just felt tired, rehearsed. Like he was reading from an old script and assuming I still played the same role. So I replied, "I hope you find what you're looking for." Then I put my phone down. And I started packing. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Just decisively. His clothes went into garment bags, his shoes into 2 laundry baskets, his skincare products lined up neatly in a box. I wrapped the little decorative pieces he'd added to my space in bubble wrap. I even labeled his chargers. Because I knew if I didn't, he'd accuse me of keeping one later. While I packed, the messages started flooding in. "Ruby, what does that mean? Don't be weird. I'm serious. Are you really doing this over one text? Pick up the phone." I didn't respond. By midnight, everything he owned was stacked in my guest room in clean, organized rows. Like a move out. Not a fight. A decision. I changed the keypad code, deactivated his garage access, removed his name from the building system. Then I sat down in my living room. And for the first time in months, I could hear the refrigerator humming. That's how loud the relationship had been. Silence sounded unfamiliar. At 12:23 a.m., my phone rang from an unknown number. I picked up, thinking it might be work. It wasn't. "Are you seriously packing my stuff right now?" Ethan snapped. "You said we needed a break," I replied. "I took you seriously." That set him off. "You always do this. You take things too far." "No," I said quietly. "I just finally took your words at face value." There was a pause. Then his tone shifted. Softer, fragile. "I just wanted you to fight for me." I leaned back against the counter, staring at the dark reflection of myself in the window. "Ethan, I'm not auditioning to stay in my own relationship." Silence. Then sharper this time. "So I'm disposable to you?" "No," I said, but threats stopped working. I told him he could pick up his things Saturday between 10 and noon. He started crying. I said, "Good night," and I hung up. The next morning I felt lighter. Not happy, not relieved. Just clear. For about 48 hours, I thought that was the end. It wasn't. The first thing Ethan did was outsource the conversation. Sunday afternoon, my phone lit up with a message from Delaney, one of the same friends who had been on FaceTime the night everything shifted. "Hey, Ethan's not doing well. He's a mess. Maybe you could meet him for coffee, just for closure." Closure. I stared at the word longer than I should have. Closure from someone who had tried to end things like a threat. I typed back slowly. "There's nothing unclear about what happened." A few minutes later, another message came in, this time from his cousin, Blake, on Instagram. "Hey, I don't know the full story, but Ethan says you kind of blindsided him." I didn't argue. Didn't explain. I just sent a screenshot. His message, "Maybe we need a break, so you remember what you're losing." My reply, "I hope you find what you're looking for." That was enough. Blake saw it. And then nothing. No defense. No follow-up. Just silence. Delaney tried one more time. "He didn't think you'd actually go this far." I read that twice. Then I replied, "That's exactly the problem. He thought he could threaten leaving without ever being let go." She didn't answer after that. And just like that, the first wave ended. The second came publicly. By Friday night, Ethan had started posting. At first it was subtle, vague captions layered over carefully curated photos. Dim lighting, reflective angles, the kind of aesthetic sadness that performs well online. Some people shut down instead of showing up. Nothing colder than someone who turns love into logistics. Emotional abandonment is still abandonment. I didn't need to guess who they were about. A mutual friend, Tessa, sent me screenshots. "For what it's worth," she wrote, "this feels very curated." I looked at the post again. The lighting, the wording, the timing. "Yes," I replied. "That's one word for it." I didn't respond publicly. Didn't correct the narrative. Because I knew something Ethan didn't. Stories like that don't hold up without an audience willing to believe them. By Saturday morning, he was back in my messages. "I didn't mean it like that. Can we just talk? Please don't make this humiliating." I read all of them. Then replied once. "Pickup window is still 10 o'clock to noon. Bring whoever you want." At 10:11, the front desk called. "Hi, Ruby," the concierge said carefully. "Your guest is here." Of course he was. I had already told him not to send him up unannounced. "I'll come down," I said. When the elevator doors opened into the lobby, I saw him immediately. Ethan stood near the seating area, dressed like nothing had happened. Clean lines, composed posture, that familiar confidence sitting just beneath the surface. Next to him was Delaney, and between them, a luggage cart, stacked with his life. He looked at it, then at me, and laughed. Not a happy laugh, a sharp one. "Wow," he said. "You actually did all this." "Yes." "This is insane." "No," I said evenly. "This is organized." Delaney made a sound, half laugh, half choke, then quickly looked away. Ethan shot her a look before turning back to me. 3 years, he said. "And this is how fast you fold?" I didn't react to the tone. "You called it a break," I said. "I accepted it. That's not folding." He stared at me like he was waiting for something else. An apology. Emotion. A second act. There wasn't one. And when he realized that, something in his expression shifted, hardened. "You're going to regret this." "I don't think so." He loaded his things in 2 trips, muttering under his breath the entire time, about how dramatic I was, how cold I'd become, how none of this was necessary. I didn't respond, because none of it required a response. Before the second elevator doors closed, he stopped, looked at me one last time. Yeah, you could have fought for me, Ruby. For a second. Just a second. I saw the version of him I used to believe in. Then it passed. I could have, I said quietly, but I finally chose me instead. The doors slid shut. And for the first time in a long time, that didn't feel like losing. It felt like something else. Something quieter. Something steadier. Hope. I thought that would be enough. That once he left, the story would end. But some people don't know how to exist without access. Tuesday evening, I came home from work, exhausted but calm. The kind of calm that had started to feel normal again. Halfway through taking off my shoes, the front desk called. "Hey, Ruby," Nate, the evening concierge, said, his voice already tired. "Your ex is in the lobby. He has a tote bag and what looks like banana bread." I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because it was predictable. "Is he trying to come up?" "He says he just wants 10 minutes, that you're being stubborn." Of course he did. "I'll come down," I said. Not because I wanted to talk, because I wanted it witnessed. When I stepped into the lobby, Ethan turned toward me instantly. He was standing beside a small table. On it sat a foil pan, still warm, and a card with my name written across the front. He smiled, and somehow, that annoyed me more than anything else. "I brought your favorite," he said softly. "You need to stop coming here." The smile flickered. "Can you stop acting like I'm a stranger?" he asked. "We had one fight." I looked at him steadily. "No," I said. "We had 3 years of the same fight. You just finally lost." Behind the desk, Nate suddenly found something very interesting to look at on his computer screen. Ethan ignored him, picked up the card and held it out. "Just read it," he said. I didn't take it, didn't touch it. I just looked at it from where I stood. Then I looked back at him. "I'm not interested in a new version of the same story." His jaw tightened. Then, softer again, "Ruby, I thought you knew me better than this." "I do," I said. "That's why I'm standing in a lobby instead of letting you upstairs." That landed. I saw it. The crack. The shift. For a moment, he looked around like he needed an audience. But the only one there was a concierge who clearly didn't want to be part of whatever this was. So Ethan grabbed the banana bread, muttered something about me being emotionally unavailable, and walked out. The glass doors closed behind him. And just like that, the performance ended. Nate glanced up at me. "Want me to make a note?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded and typed something into the system. A small thing. But it felt like reinforcement. That night, I slept without checking my phone, without replaying conversations, without wondering what I should have said differently. And a few days later, I started running again. Nothing dramatic, just a neighborhood running group that met Wednesday evenings. I had stopped going months earlier. Ethan used to say it made me unavailable, which usually meant I was doing something that didn't revolve around him. But now, my time felt like mine again. The first run hurt, my lungs burned, my legs protested, but my thoughts had space. That's where I met Leo. He was 32, worked in pediatric oncology administration. We ran side by side for a while talking about nothing important. Bad coffee, inconsistent weather, shin splints. There was no spark, no intensity, no performance, just ease. And I didn't realize how much I'd been missing that until I felt it again. By the second week, something shifted. Ethan stopped trying to sound hurt and started trying to sound strategic. At first, it was just the narrative. He told people I had been planning to leave him for months, that I used his message as an excuse, that I had already moved on, and panicked when he mentioned taking a break. By the third version, I wasn't just cold. I was controlling, insecure, threatened by his career. It would have been almost impressive if it hadn't been so predictable. Then came the first coincidence. Tuesday morning, I stopped at a coffee shop near the clinic. Same place I'd gone to for years. Same order. Cold brew, almond milk. I was waiting at the counter when the door opened, and Ethan walked in. He paused when he saw me, then smiled. That same careful, curated expression. "Wow," he said lightly. "Small world." I didn't respond. Didn't engage. I picked up my drink and walked out. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Still taking almond milk, I see." I stopped walking. Just for a second. Read it again. Then again. That was the moment something in me recalibrated. This wasn't coincidence. This was observation. I took a screenshot. Saved the number. Started a folder. By Friday, the situation had escalated. A Venmo request came through. $740. The note read, "Reimbursement for shared decor and emotional distress." I stared at it. Not angry. Not even surprised. Just tired. I declined it. One word. No. That same afternoon, an email arrived. Subject line, "Final items." Ethan claimed I had maliciously withheld some of his belongings. I went to the storage closet, checked everything, found 2 throw blankets and a pair of boots he'd left behind. I took photos, attached them, and replied, "Your mother can pick these up if you want them." That was the moment the tone changed. Because Ethan didn't respond, his mother did. She called around 6:15 that evening. I almost didn't answer. But I liked her. Always had. "Ruby," she said, her voice already carrying something heavy. "I don't need details. I just need to know. Did he really send that text first?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." Then I forwarded the screenshot while we were still on the phone. Silence. Not defensive. Not angry. Just quiet. Then she exhaled. "He told us you threw him out after an argument about a work trip." "That's not what happened." "I can see that now." There was a pause. And then she said something I didn't expect. "I'm sorry. I raised him better than this." She didn't ask me to reconsider. Didn't ask me to be patient. Didn't try to soften what he'd done. She just acknowledged it. And somehow that gave me more peace than anything Ethan had said, because at least one person from his side had chosen reality. I thought maybe that would slow things down. It didn't. It escalated. The stories got louder, more dramatic, more distorted. And then he started appearing. The second time didn't feel like chance. I was leaving work late Wednesday evening when my clinic manager, Serena, stopped me. "Hey," she said carefully, "did you ask someone to bring you dinner tonight?" "No." Her expression tightened slightly. "Someone called the front desk. Said your boyfriend was dropping something off and wanted to know if you were still here." A cold feeling settled in my chest. "He's not my boyfriend anymore." "I figured," she said. "I didn't give them any information." "Thank you." I went back to my office, closed the door, and sat there for a moment, letting it settle. This wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about access. I started documenting everything. Screenshots, call logs, dates, times, patterns. The following Monday, I met with an attorney. Consultation fee, $350. Worth every dollar. He listened, reviewed everything, then said exactly what I already knew. Keep documenting. No emotional responses. One clear instruction to stop contact if you haven't already. If it continues, we escalate. So I sent one final message. Do not contact me again. Not by phone, email, work, or in person. 2 minutes later, he replied, "You don't get to erase me." I didn't respond. 3 days later, the message came, 9:40 p.m. Unknown number. "I can see your balcony light on." I didn't go outside. Didn't check. Didn't react. I took a screenshot, locked the balcony door, and called the non-emergency police line. The officer who arrived was calm, practical. He reviewed everything, took notes, filed the report. "You're doing the right thing," he said. "Document early." Then he added something that stayed with me. "People hear no contact and think it means silence. It doesn't. It means stop." Exactly. The real explosion came that Saturday. The running club had signed up for a charity 5K downtown. I almost didn't go, but I needed movement, needed normal, needed something that wasn't this. So I went. Leo was there, along with about 30 other people pretending they enjoyed running hills. We finished, grabbed water, stood near the park entrance talking about brunch plans. And then Ethan appeared, like something summoned. He was dressed carefully, hair done, clothes perfect, anger just beneath the surface. His eyes moved from me to Leo, and then he smiled, that brittle, breaking smile. "So this is why you ended things so fast." Leo immediately stepped back slightly. "I can go," he said quietly. "You don't need to," I told him. Then I turned to Ethan. "You need to leave." He laughed. "Why? You don't want him hearing how you treated me?" "There is no us to discuss here." He ignored me, looked directly at Leo. "Just so you know, she moves on before she finishes lying." Leo didn't react, didn't defend, just crossed his arms and said calmly, "I don't think this is about me." That made Ethan angrier. He stepped closer, lowered his voice, but not enough. "If I can't fix this, I can at least make sure you don't look good moving on." People were watching now. A couple runners turned. The volunteer table went quiet. And then Jeremy, one of the organizers, walked over. "Everything okay here?" "No," I said. "He's been told not to contact me." Ethan's entire demeanor shifted. Instantly. His eyes filled. His voice softened. I just wanted closure." Jeremy looked at me. I held his gaze. "I have documentation. Police report, attorney." That was enough. Not because Ethan respected the boundary, because now there were witnesses. People who had seen both versions and knew which one felt real. Jeremy stayed. Another volunteer joined him. And within minutes, Ethan left. But the damage had already been done. Or rather, the truth had already been seen. That afternoon, Jeremy sent me a written statement of what he'd witnessed. I saved it, added it to the folder. Monday morning, my attorney filed for a protection order. Because by then, this wasn't a breakup anymore. It was a pattern. And patterns don't stop on their own. The hearing was scheduled 6 weeks later. 6 weeks of documentation, of silence, of rebuilding something that didn't feel fragile every time my phone buzzed. By the time the date arrived, I wasn't nervous. I was prepared. Ethan walked into the courtroom wearing a navy button-down, sleeves neatly rolled, expression carefully controlled. He looked like someone who had practiced looking reasonable, like someone who believed presentation could still override truth. For a second, I studied him, not with anger, not with longing, just recognition. Then I looked away. I had brought a folder. Not dramatic, not exaggerated, just thorough. Inside, it was everything. The original message, the call logs from multiple unknown numbers, the coffee shop text, the note from Serena about the clinic call, the balcony message, the police report, Jeremy's witness statement from the 5K copies of the final no-contact instruction. Paper is a quiet kind of power. It doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't need to. His attorney spoke first. Polished, controlled, predictable. My client was emotional after the sudden end of a meaningful relationship she began. He was attempting to communicate, to seek closure. He misunderstood the boundary and acted out of distress, not malice. I didn't react, because I had already heard every version of that story, just not in a courtroom. The judge, an older woman with a steady, unimpressed gaze, read through the documents in silence, page by page, line by line, no interruptions, no expressions, just focus. Then she looked up at Ethan. He told you not to contact him again, she said, her voice even. Why were you commenting on his personal habits, calling his workplace, and referencing his home? Ethan swallowed, shifted slightly. His voice softened. I was heartbroken, he said. I didn't think one message would end 3 years. The judge glanced back down at the first screenshot, then back at him. One message didn't end this relationship, she said calmly. It revealed it. The room went still. Even Ethan. Because that wasn't something you could argue with. Order granted. 1 year. No contact. 300 feet from my home, my workplace, and any documented routine locations, including the running club. Just like that, it was over. Not emotionally, but legally. And sometimes that's what matters first. Outside the courtroom, I wasn't expecting anything. But she was there, his mother, standing near the bench, holding a small tote bag. When she saw me, she stood. Her expression wasn't defensive, wasn't pleading, just tired. I thought you might want these, she said quietly, handing me the bag. Inside were the last things Ethan had left behind. A scarf, 2 books, a ceramic mug from Thanksgiving. You don't need to keep carrying pieces of his life, she added. I nodded. Thank you. She hesitated for a second, then reached out, gently squeezing my arm. I'm sorry, she said. I think he mistook being loved for being obeyed. I didn't know what to say to that. So I didn't, because some truths don't need a response. They just need to be heard. That was the last time I saw anyone from his family. 3 months later, my life looked different. Not dramatically, not in ways that would impress anyone scrolling through a screen, but in ways that mattered. I got promoted, lead therapist for our return to sport program, more responsibility, better pay, a sense of forward motion that felt earned, not forced. My condo felt like mine again. No tension in the air. No hesitation when I walked into my own kitchen. No quiet calculations before asking a simple question. Just space. Real space. The kind that doesn't demand anything in return. Leo and I kept seeing each other. Slowly. Carefully. No pressure. No games. The first time he canceled plans, he sent a simple message. Hey, my day ran late. Would Saturday work better? I stared at it for a moment. Not because it was confusing. Because it was normal. And I realized how long it had been since normal felt this unfamiliar. Hope, it turns out, isn't always loud. It doesn't always arrive with certainty or intensity. Sometimes it's quiet. Steady. Almost easy. Ethan, from what I heard, kept posting for a while. Vague things about healing. About surviving emotionally unavailable partners. But eventually, that stopped too. Because drama needs an audience. And without one, it fades. I used to think hope meant waiting. Waiting for someone to change. Waiting for the relationship to return to the version I kept defending in my head. Waiting for the good moments to outweigh the bad. But it doesn't work like that. Hope isn't waiting for chaos to become kind. It's choosing peace, even when it feels unfamiliar. It's understanding that love shouldn't feel like something you have to earn back every time you disagree. It's knowing that when someone uses distance as a weapon, you're allowed to take it seriously and let them go. Ethan wanted me to be afraid of losing him. What I found instead was what I had been losing by staying. And once I saw that clearly, there was no going back.